Hello and welcome to The Hero Spouse. I'm Kendra Ruth, here to answer one of your questions about marriage and midlife crisis. Today we have an anonymous female left behind and forward-moving spouse with a bomb drop of August 1st, 2015 and a date of marriage of 2002. She has a boomerang who is a high energy replayer. She says, my husband left right after bomb drop. Separated 9 months. We saw each other often because we have kids. The alienator relationship ended. He became depressed for a bit, then he continued to show running behaviors while back home, even though he was mostly calm, with weight loss, exercise, new clothes, friends, self-absorbed, some anger, etc. Then, summer of 2022, so we've just fast-forwarded 7 years, okay? Bomb drop August 2015, 9 months, so we fast-forwarded 7 years from bomb, and 6.5 or something from return home. Summer of 2022, there was a death in my family. He got very depressed and withdrawn. And there was another bomb drop. End of summer 2022. He was unhappy and he wanted a divorce. He's back with the original alienator, but he hasn't admitted it. He moved out in March, just this past year, or just this past March of 2023. Very soon after, he said he wants to see if we can make it work. Yeah, I'm shocked. Just so you know, you said boomerang. This is a clinging boomerang. Okay. The return home previously can show that, but there was a long gap, even though you said you still saw the MLC stuff. But right now, leaving and wanting to come home, very soon after, right now it's a clinging boomerang type. Okay. He wants us to go to marriage therapy. He's reading marriage books and talking about building a new marriage. My question, can an MLCer move through the rest of MLC if he doesn't hit rock bottom and he doesn't have a bad ending with the alienator? Will going to counseling and working on a marriage prevent him from looking at himself and taking ownership of his actions? There hasn't really been, and I'm sorry. I'm worried that this will stall his MLC and it comes back around again, like it did before, right? Because you've probably heard me talk about MLC and then a 10-year gap, and you had 7. And that separated for 9 months, that yanked out of the tunnel. Yeah, that's that kind of thing. Oftentimes in these cases, I'll say, yeah, it's one of the rare ones where, I see it, but where I see 2 MLCs kind of thing, or because it took a break, but a really long one. And so, yes, it's right to call that a second bomb drop. Even though you said, he continued to show running behavior. So you were dealing with an at-home MLCer, but low levels. You were able to function in your marriage. Whereas with somebody who usually says, I have a low energy or an at-home MLCer, they're not functioning in the marriage. I have an at-home MLCer and it's terrible and I don't know what to do. So, rock bottom. They can dig. You hit rock bottom, they'll just keep digging. If they don't have a bad ending with the alienator, so what? The alienator is a symptom of midlife crisis. And what if the alienator isn't somebody who's also in midlife crisis? Sometimes the question I get is, do they have to break up with the alienator? Well, what if both of them are in an MLC and when they break up, it's not mutual, it's one of them? Does that mean it's bad for one's marriage but not the other? No. Don't worry about how it ends with the alienator. How it ends might mean it's not really ended, yes. But there are any number of ways. They have to be ready, regardless of how it ends with her, regardless of this rock bottom thing we call. They have to be ready. So, what is rock bottom? We think it's where everything is so horrible we can't keep going. I don't want to live another day of life like this. But really what it is they've hit the bottom where they are now putting the pieces of themselves back together. They're sitting down here on rock bottom, as we call it, and I call it is the bottom of the chasm of liminality. And all of the pieces of their self, these traumas and all these things that were in the bomb that exploded, the pieces of themselves that they had suppressed and repressed. I picture them like these shards of a mirror. So those disco ball mirrors that are all in pieces, they're mosaic. It's a mirror because it's all little pieces of self. Now they have to put those back together again. That's rock bottom. And it doesn't mean that they have to be sitting there. I'm here because, and I've decided to put the pieces here because I don't want it to get any worse. But that's what we think of it. And so do they have to hit a place where it can't get any worse? Because I'm sorry, things can always get worse. We think this is rock bottom, but what happens if rock bottom is a place in their life? Think of the alcoholic. I don't want to live anymore like this. But then their mom dies. Their daughter commits suicide. There's a hurricane and their house is destroyed. All things that weren't in control, but things got worse. And do you think those things getting worse are going to affect them? Yeah. So rock bottom, when I say they dig, or, the hurricane can dig for them. Things can always get worse. So it's not that. I still think that you are right to be asking these questions because they are concerns that are valid. Will going to counseling and working on a marriage prevent him from looking and taking ownership of his actions? It is such a great question because the answer is yes and no. And why? Well, what is the counselor doing? Is this a you need to look for enlightenment and be happy counselor? That's often individual counseling is especially that. And so they enable the escape and avoid. Is that what a marriage counselor is going to force you to focus on your marriage? If they're not ready, the marriage counselor will say you're not ready for this and it's not working. At least one who recognizes that. And they can advise you to go to other counselor or say, come back when you're both ready. So they won't work on the counseling in a way that would be valid if they're not ready. In that sense, it won't prevent them from looking at themselves because the work of what counseling, and this is a should of counseling, so it doesn't mean that they do it that way. They should. The point of it is to have him look at himself. You look at yourself, you look at your marriage, you look at all those things and take ownership for the actions. So the purpose of counseling is to do the things that you think it's going to prevent him from doing. But you need the right counselor. And it's not going to work if he's not ready for that. Now, here's what I'm saying, though. He wants to do all those things. Do them. It's not going to harm if he then says, you know what, I'm not ready, or if the counselor says he's not ready. What it showed to him was that he's still not ready. And that's great. I don't mind that. As long as you don't allow him to use it as a checkbox. Okay, we tried this. No, it's not that we tried it. Yeah, but it didn't fail. We weren't ready. It works when the participants are willing to do the work. And it does. It works when you are both willing and able. It's a big piece of it, able to do the work. And counseling, he needs to learn that an I'm sorry is necessary. Will it stall his MLC? The whole purpose is really so that he can face it. But here's what an MLC is escape and avoid from facing it. And you will discover, or he will discover, in that counseling whether he is ready for that or not. Now, if all I do is look at your bomb records 2015, I'd say, yeah, sure, it could be ready for that. Now, looking at you have a recent bomb drop because of the big gap as of 2022, maybe not. And especially 9 months, he didn't face those things. And he's been doing running behaviors that whole time. But maybe. I still think that these are great things to try. And talk to the counselor about your concerns. Talk to him. It's okay to tell him, yes, I want us to do this. And if you're willing to do it, sure, I will do it. But I want you to reserve all of those. Oh, that was a really good session. He did so much work. He worked so hard, because what happens a year later? And it's like, it's not working for me. And it felt great to you. And the whole year it seemed good. And he showed genuine efforts and all this. It's still not working. And sometimes it's because he was feeling those genuine efforts. And then suddenly one day it all crashed in his head. And he got afraid again. We don't know what's going on in their head like that. Sometimes they were hiding that it wasn't working for them. But sometimes it really was. And then bam, one day they're like, oh my God. And there was a trigger, and it might be a trigger they didn't even recognize. A song came on, they saw the alienator, or just something happened physiologically. And a hormone drop. And that affects us. But I don't think it means you shouldn't be working on this. If he's ready and he's willing to see if he is willing. He may very well think he's willing and learn that he's not, or something to that effect. Okay. I think what the concern is you could get into analysis paralysis going, well, I didn't want us to go to counseling too soon, so we didn't go. And you just set yourself up of always second guessing each thing you're going to do. Analysis paralysis. Instead, try it. It's okay to fail out and go back again later. Okay? And you let him know that. It's not a checkbox that once you try it, it's over. Let him know that going in. And letting him know that going in isn't giving him an out. It's validating that it's not ready when he feels it. Because he would have taken it anyway and felt guilty about it. And we don't want him to force his way through counseling when he really isn't doing it. Okay? So I hope this is helpful, and I will see everybody in the next question.